Look at this moment. There is no history in it, no yesterday, no tomorrow. There is only what is happening, breath, sound, the living sensation of a body that simply is. And yet, almost immediately, something stirs. An inner voice begins to narrate. It tells you who you are, what you have done, what has been done to you, what you want, what you fear. In a matter of seconds, you have left the moment and entered a story. That story is called I. This is not a metaphor. Neuroscientific research has identified a network of brain regions that activates when the mind thinks about itself across time. Past memories, future expectations, comparisons with others, worries and regrets. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network. It includes the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex, among other areas. A study published in PNAS in 2011 by Brewer and colleagues showed, as an associational finding, that this network is less active in experienced meditators compared to untrained individuals. This is not proof of causality, but it is a sign that the brain's self-referential activity is not fixed. In a certain sense, this network is a time machine. It projects you into the past to gather evidence of who you are, and into the future to protect you from what might happen. All of this has evolutionary value. The ability to plan, remember, and anticipate was fundamental to survival. The problem is not that the network exists. The problem is that we live inside it 24 hours a day, convinced that the narration it produces is the real me. The distinction that neuroscience offers, and that deserves a pause, is the one between the narrative self and the experiential self. The first is the self extended through time, the one that remembers and plans, compares and defines itself. The second is the self of the present moment, rooted in direct experience, a sensation in the chest, the sound of a voice, the weight of an object in the hand. A study by Farb, Segel, Mayberg and colleagues, published in Social Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience in 2007, indicated that these two ways of processing oneself engage partially distinct neural networks, and that attentional training, such as mindfulness practice, can make them more dissociable. This is a single study, and caution is warranted, but the insight it suggests is powerful. There is a way of being in one's own experience without the self-narrative taking over. The contemplative tradition has described this same distinction in different language. Krishnamurti, for example, spoke at length about the observer and the observed, pointing out how thought creates a split between the one who looks and what is being looked at, feeding the illusion of a solid, continuous self at the center of experience. This is not science. It is a philosophical and contemplative perspective, but it has crossed centuries and cultures with a consistency worth examining. What happens concretely when the narrative self is running? The mind takes experiences and arranges them into a story. I am someone who is treated badly. I am more capable than others. I am not enough. I have been wronged. Every story has a protagonist, you, and every protagonist has precise boundaries, enemies and allies, claims to uphold and threats to repel. This is the crucial point. The narrative self does not only build an identity, it builds a separation. It defines where me ends and not me begins. And that boundary line is the root of nearly every poison this book sets out to examine. Think of a moment when you felt envy, resentment, or the urge to diminish someone with words. In that moment, there was always an I that felt threatened, overtaken, unrecognized. Envy arises because someone else has what my narrative self claims as its own. Resentment arises because the story I tell about myself includes a wrong that was never repaired. Gossip arises because speaking ill of others is a way to restore, in the narrative, the boundary between me, who matters, and them, who matter less. All these movements have the same engine, the self as a separate entity, with borders to defend and a rank to maintain. Now pause the thought for a moment, not to suppress it, but to look at it. When you observe the thought, I am this, or I am not enough, who is looking? If there is something that watches the thought, then that thought is not the whole of you. This observation is not a technique to apply mechanically. It is an opening, a moment in which the narrative machine loosens and becomes visible. The experiential self, the one rooted in the present, does not carry the same urgency to defend itself. It has no story to protect. It has no sharp boundary to patrol. It does not disappear, but it lacks the compulsive need of the narrative self to always be someone defined, separate, more or less worthy than others. Everything that will follow in this book, every poison we will examine together, will be understood more deeply if you carry this structure with you. The mind builds a separate self through narrative. That self has borders, and the defense of those borders generates suffering, distance, and the subtle forms of inner violence we call negative thoughts. The aim is not to eliminate the sense of self. It is to see it for what it is, a useful construction, necessary in many contexts, but not identical to what you are in the living moment. Between the narrative self and the present moment, there is a breath. In that breath, something opens.